Hello, it's Michelle here. I wanted to share a quick story, something that happened to me this week, and it reminded me of another story, and they both involve rings. So this week I was down catching up with some friends down at the beach and having a lovely time. And I was in the water, and it was the first time I'd been in the water, and I know that's just a travesty because being in the ocean is so dear to me. I love it. It makes me feel so good just dunking my head. I hadn't managed it this summer, and it's now March, so I was definitely keen to get in. The water was so warm, and I had my beautiful puppy dog. She was running around, and she came running up to me, and she sort of jumped in a playful way, and I put my hands out, and this ring was just taken off with her feet. And I thought, oh no, that's it. I've lost it. So I was in about probably mid-calf water, and straight after it was off my finger, a wave came in and crashed around me, and I had no idea where it had fallen. And I just thought, I want to get this ring back. So this ring is actually very significant to me because it's the very first thing I ever made while I was silversmithing. It was the first project, if you like, when I was learning to silversmith. And it reminds me of the beginning of things and the excitement of what new learning can be about. And so it is quite an important ring. And I just had the image of the ring in my hand, in my head, and I thrust my hand down just near my foot. I had no idea. Pulled up a handful of sand, and in it was sitting my silver ring. Like in all the areas, and I'd already taken a step when the wave came, and I had no idea where it got flicked off, but just held an image of the ring that I wanted to find in my mind and thrust my hand down into the sand. And so it was a little miracle. I can't tell you how overjoyed I was. And the other ring story I wanted to tell you, which is where I got the technique for what I did to find this ring in the sand, was when I lost this ring, my wedding ring, in the paddock. So I was actually just out the front here. We've got an orchard, and I was doing some weeding one morning, and it was quite cool, and there was lots of moisture on the weeds. So I was just, picking out big bundles of the weeds as I was gathering them, and I would walk down to the edge of the orchard and just toss them over the barbed wire fence into the next paddock. And when I did that, and I'd been at it for about 15-20 minutes, and then suddenly I flung a bundle of weeds, and I took a step back to the orchard and realised that my wedding ring was no longer on my finger. So I said, okay, it has to be there. So I climbed over the barbed wire fence, and I marked out an area that was probably 3 or 4 metres square, 3 or 4 metres by 3 or 4 metres, where all the weeds had landed. And I thought, I'm just going to systematically go through this. And the fear that came up, oh my goodness, I've lost my wedding ring. It's an expensive ring. Oh no, it won't be the same if I get a replacement. It'll cost money to replace it. This is really bad, So all these things were rattling through my head. And then I thought, no, I'm going to focus on the excitement and the gratitude that I'm going to feel when I see that metal peeking through all the grass. So where I was standing, where the weeds had been piled up, it was probably over 1 metre high in grass, and then the weeds were, another sort of load on top of that. So it wasn't like it was just sort of short grass that I was wading through. It was definitely a pile of pasture. And so I just held in my mind this excitement that I was going to feel. I was going to feel so excited when I found it. And I had been working at it for about 10 minutes, and my husband Ian came up and said, "What you doing?" And I said, "I have lost my wedding ring." And he was like, "Oh no, it's gone." And I was like, "No." So he started to help me, and then he made a comment which said, "We're never going to find it." And I said, "Okay, here's what I'm doing. I'm focused on the excitement that I'm going to feel The minute I see the metal shining through the grass, I know I'm going to find it. If you can't hold that same belief, you probably need to go back to the house and have a cup of tea in the kitchen and wait for me. And he went, okay. So he got back to work. And then about 10 minutes later, I got it. I got the glint of the metal buried right down in the meter of the pasture, sitting, hooked up on a bit of grass and sitting on the soil. And I reached down and there it is. So the story of Two Rings is about holding the image of the feeling in my body about refinding something that's very dear to me. And that's been an absolute lesson, that every time I start to get wobbly when I've got something I'm trying to manifest and create in the world and things don't look quite right, or they look quite bleak, or someone comes along and says it's never going to happen, I go back to the feeling of it when it manifests, when I can recognize it, when it's real in the world. How does that make me feel? How does that make me feel in my body? And that's exactly what I work on. There's been some challenges in the last couple of years where I've had to practice some of that on a daily, weekly basis. So give it a try. For something as simple as a lost item, just hold in your mind the feeling of joy when you find it. And I guarantee you'll place your hand on it, even if it's a random strike out into the dark. All right. Thank you for joining me here to hear about my story of the Two Rings. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now.